everyone, my name is Marie Chang, and today I will be drawing myself into a scene from Cowboy Bebop. I'll be using this design that I already showed you in a previous video, and I'll be drawing myself into this scene with Ed and Ein. I think it's no secret already that if you've been watching my videos, I am a huge corgi lover. I grew up with the corgi in my family for 15 years, and Ein is by far my favorite character from the Cowboy Bebop series. So, of course, I had to take this still from the scene where he tries shrooms for the first time, and I just really wanted to draw myself grabbing his butt, because that's exactly what I would do if I saw a corgi. This design in particular was really hard for me. I don't typically draw in this style, and it's definitely a lot more realistic and grounded in human proportions than like the typical cartoony style that I draw in. So, getting this design to begin with was really hard, and now trying to pose it out and make it look like it fit into the scene was just as challenging. I started off, as I always do, just by doing a really rough drawing. And in this case, because I was so unsure of what on earth I was doing, I just started to erase away at my initial drawing. And I think I redid this pose so many different times just to try to figure out what looked like a believable and accurate shape, what looked like the right proportions, and what looked like a genuine and on-model facial expression. Right now, I have a rough version of the facial expression that I want, but honestly, this looks like a little too creepy for me. Like, I used Ed's excited face as a reference, but it works for Ed's character in the context of the show, and again, I'm pulling individual frames from animated movement, and so something that reads in a certain emotion over the course of a scene is going to feel different when you only have it condensed in a still. So that face still looks super creepy to me, but I'm slowly making some changes and evaluating what looks more believable. I adjusted the position of my head and some of my hair just to make sure it was clear that I was looking downward, and to try to make myself look a little less lurky. After I finished that rough sketch, I decided, what, the best way to see how this turns out is just to do my rough, clean line and get a better sense of the shape and the form behind it. So that's what I'm doing now. Again, you can tell that I'm still not super sure if I should keep this pose, where that back leg should go realistically in this space. And I'm just trying to balance as much as I can all the elements of perspective and what my character is doing in the scene. I was really struggling to figure out what I wanted to do with her hair, and if I wanted to keep the same streak and shadows I had in my original design, and also just figuring out how to make the hairline look realistic, because Cowboy Bebop's characters, most of their female characters, have like a really specific look, and it's just tough to figure out, okay, should I push it a little bit for my own design, or should I make sure it's super true to the way that they do it? I was, also playing around with how realistic the proportions should be, even in the way that my arms are outstretched. How much do I show the indentation of this area, my lower arm versus my upper arm? So there's a lot to think about, but ultimately, as long as you are willing to experiment and try something, it's always better to have something down than nothing at all and just staring at a blank canvas, So at this point, I was happy enough with my rough lines to go in and do a clean line pass, and I chose a color that was similar to the color of the line art in the still. It's not a true black, so that's something to always check for if you're going to do this style of drawing. I also wanted to make sure it was clear where my legs were making contact with the ground, and to make sure it looked like I wasn't floating in the air weirdly, and that I was clearly grabbing Ein, and I needed to make sure my hands felt like they were very much in this world and weren't just random objects that had been thrown in without thought. So once I was happy with that, I went in and just did a flat color. Again, I just color picked exactly what I had used in my original design, and then later on is when I went back through and adjusted the actual saturation and tried to get a more cohesive tone to all of the colors I used. And even if you start your color pass, it doesn't mean that you can't go back and make changes. I went back and changed my hand placement just to make it look more believable, and there were many moments where I would turn the background back to full 100% opacity so I could compare the placement of what I had drawn to the way that it looked in the actual scene itself. Some of the clean lines had too many little bumps in them from the way that I inked it, so I went back and cleaned them up, and then after that I had to figure out what way I should draw the teeth so they don't look absolutely terrifying. Honestly, this is still a little spooky, but it's fine. And then I had to figure out how I should do my hair. Once I started coloring my hair, I realized that I had drawn the original line art way too short in comparison to my design. In the design, my hair is clearly almost to the top of my butt, and over here my hair had not been drawn that way, so I had to make some changes. And after I did that, add the colors, and it looked a lot better, and I was overall a lot more happy with it. I really like doing the little pink, cheeks on these types of characters, so threw that in. And after I finished the flat color, it was time to do shadows. Now, I don't typically draw a lot of shadows in my artwork. I really like just flat color or even just black and white line art, but Cowboy Bebop's characters are colored a certain way, so I added some shadows, and I also wanted to mimic that kind of grainy look from the original footage, so I took a really noisy background and layered that on top using a multiply layer just to try to make this image fit the show a little more. And then finally went back through and added all those hard shadows that you see where my legs are, just to make it very clear that I am in this scene and that I am an object that has the ability to cast a shadow in the world of Cowboy Bebop. So here we have the final finished drawing. I am excitedly hanging out with Ein, my best friend ever. He could not care less about me, but that's okay. And yeah, thanks again for watching this video, and I'll see you next time.